I call Raymond Ho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having listened to the Minister and other parliamentary colleagues, I would like to record my concerns by focusing on some specific clauses. And if we look at the purpose of this bill, the new principles would require the government to formulate fiscal strategy with regard to its interaction with monetary policy, and that's contained in the section 26G sub 1 sub F. And secondly, require the government to formulate fiscal strategy with regard to its likely impact on present and future generations. And thirdly, to ensure that the Crown's resources are managed effectively and efficiently. One existing principle would be amended to require revenue strategy to have regard to efficiency and fairness, including the predictability and stability of tax rates. The proposed section 26G sub 1 sub F formulating fiscal strategy with regard to its interaction with monetary policy is neutral enough to have little effect. However, if its intent is to subordinate fiscal policy to monetary policy, which are totally different things, that could significantly limit a government's social and economic options if the policies followed by the Reserve Bank were in conflict with the government of the day. For example, a government wishing to raise wage rates by various mechanisms could find its wishes neutered or undermined by a Reserve Bank which considers such efforts inflationary. So, Mr. Speaker, the Treasury and the government's reading of this particular monetary policy in paragraph F is too narrow. We believe the wording in F should be formulating fiscal and monetary policy with regard to interactions between them. And this proposed change was rejected by the government, who have said fiscal responsibility legislation should not influence monetary policy. And if that logic were applied consistently, then fiscal responsibility legislation should not refer to effects on economic efficiency either, which this bill does exactly. Secondly, the proposed section 26G sub 1 sub G formulating fiscal strategy with regard to its likely impact on present and future generations is sensible, as long as impact includes a full range of considerations, whether economic, social, environment, or otherwise. Much has been reported in the media with regard to the age of eligibility for superannuation, for example. But it is clear from advice from officials that the amendment will have no enforceable effect at all on nationals' refusal to address the age of eligibility for superannuation, despite this being the most obvious example of budget settings that have effects between generations. Superannuation costs rose from $7.3 billion in 2008 to $10.2 billion in 2013. This is already more than the cost of all welfare benefits combined. Within 2 years, superannuation exceeds the amount spent by government on all education, that including preschool, primary, intermediate, secondary, and tertiary. The proposed amendment has no effect on this. And thirdly, the proposed section 26G1H ensuring that the Crown's resources are managed effectively and efficiently should also be concerned about whether they are managed in a way that is consistent with the living standards framework. For example, as argued by CETU, assets such as schools, hospitals, parks, and SOEs have a potential to impact most of the living standards framework's dimensions. Judging whether they are managed effectively and efficiently requires explicit analysis being made along the living standards framework dimensions. Further, the investment statement contained in a new section 26 NA focuses solely on the value, and I can only assume the value refers to the financial value of the Crown's assets and omits all mention of aspects such as social value and social returns. The same can be said of environmental value and other aspects of the living standards framework. Yet most of the government's fiscal assets are held primarily for non-financial purposes such as education, health, research, economic development, enhancing the efficiency of the rest of the economy, conservation or recreation. So, Mr. Speaker, to ignore those aspects and focus on financial values reduces these assets to financial ones, and thus makes it easier to justify them being sold on the basis solely of financial considerations. This is misleading and unbalanced. So, to conclude, this piece of legislation is poorly drafted and will do nothing to improve fiscal responsibility. It is based on the debate, particularly from this side of the House. This piece of legislation is poorly drafted and it is a waste of Parliament's time and is accordingly opposed by the Labour Party members. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
I call Kevin Haig.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a very brief call to